run a big event called Assembly, which sits within the Brighton Festival, and support a kind of cohort of about 20 England-based artists to develop their international practice and opportunities. I'm delighted today we've got a fantastic panel where we're all going to dive into talking about international collaboration and partnerships and exchange projects from lots of different perspectives. So I'm delighted we've got Farouk with us, who is from his company Kakilang, also co-founder of Akram Khan Company, and Clayton, who's from Fierce Festival, and Eileen, who probably know from New Art Theatre, and also joined by Michelle from Factory International. So there's a whole range of different perspectives, and I know that everybody's got all the kind of details of bios and everything to kind of delve a bit more into what everyone's up to. What I'd kind of like to do to kick off, if it's all right, is just to ask each of you to kind of introduce the work that you're doing from an international perspective, because we've got huge organisations like Factory International, who've got Fly My Waves, amazing button up at the moment, through to kind of touring company, through to amazing festival in Birmingham, through to amazing kind of East Asian kind of collaboration and support for producers. So if it's okay, just would you be all right to kick off for it? Would that be okay?
I'm good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So, oh God, I mean, I've been living in the international space for so long, I almost forget what it's like to be domestic, you know. But I as Peter just said, I was a co-founder of the Akram Khan Dance Company, and from very early on, we created a kind of a model that looked outwards in terms of, you know, co-productions, and that was an era when you could get money from festivals around the world, and they would support the creation of your work if they felt your work spoke to their audiences and was relevant to their audiences. It wasn't just, you know, we weren't a big name then, so people say, well, it's okay for you because your Akram Khan's a big name. So it's not. We started off with very ambitious projects that were daring, bold, hopefully authentic and honest, and they kind of resonated. The world has changed a lot since then, and it's not the same world. Touring is not what it used to be. Co-productions are not what they used to be. And so I'll fast forward very quickly to 2021, where I created a new company called Funneling, which resonates with the reason why I'm here today, because this is an Easter platform. And funneling is actually a Chinese word, and I've said it really poorly, so for all the Chinese speakers, forgive my tones. But it really is, it means wind chime, and the idea is that there are single individual voices that need an unexpected energy to create conversation. So it's, again, it carries on the spirit of collaboration. I'm very much about those in all the projects I've done. So funneling is really geared towards making works through, I think, where we're moving towards a co-creative possibilities, where you're working with companies on the other side of the world. You're sharing costs, you're sharing resources, you're sharing space. In fact, last year I got quite a substantial fund from the Arts Council to do a collaboration with Funneling and Shenzhen Opera and Dance Theatre. And that was only for research, and it was in the 70,000 mark. And it was there to find a language there two companies could come together, because that is a problem. And that is the beauty of a co-creative energy, is because you're trying to find not just a thing that will sell, you're trying to find a language that speaks of you honestly and what you want to say, but also can connect in a very interesting and a meaningful way to audiences around the globe, because we know that it's difficult. And I learned the hard way that, you know, you march into other people's cultures, you don't go in with your toolbox of knowledge, you have to go in almost virtually empty and absorb what's there. So I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm killing myself all the time as I'm trying to regrow myself. But I'm really in that space of still creating co-created works. I love those works, they inspire me. And I want those works to be seen as many people as possible. But I'm trying really hard not to get caught up in market mentality, because I know we're now living in a world where the language of factory is overtaking the language of garden. You know, because art grows in gardens, not in factories. Well, it grows best in gardens rather than in factories. Hi, Farouk. You talk about that. No, and I think
we should be called Garden International.
Maybe it's a joke. But I do really believe that's really important, to create a space where people can nurture their ideas in a meaningful way that starts with their own voice and their own language. So really, that's where I'm at.
Brilliant. thank you. And that's it's really interesting what you were saying as well about understanding other cultures or other tastes. I think that's something that I kind of find a lot with our work as well, that actually sometimes it's really worth supporting those artists to spend some time in another country and meet some people and go to the festivals and just really have that kind of osmosis of kind of understanding how that kind of sector works, or what might resonate about the work you're doing with the work that's happening there.
Yeah, just one quick addition to that, really. I don't want to take time from my colleagues, but I think that in our kind of obsession with freedom to speak, we also have a duty to listen. And it's the listening that brings change, and that's what I've learned from co-creative collaborations.
Brilliant, thank you. Clayton.
Hello, I'm Clayton. I'm the artistic director of Fierce Festival. I've been in this role for almost 3 years. Context about Fierce. Fierce is one of the oldest contemporary performance / live art festivals in the UK. We've been around for almost 30 years. We're a biennial festival, 5 days every 2 years. This coming October, if you want to join us in Birmingham. We're primarily international, so about 80% of our program is coming from outside the UK. And we're a kind of, I would say, a kind of major industry context within the country, where about 50% of our audiences come from outside the country, and we have about 200-ish delegates in every time. And I think one of the things I'm busy with right now is to understand the kind of challenges of the current funding landscape, and to think about the word I've been using a lot is how can we think delusionally? How do we imagine that other things are possible? So a lot of the thinking towards kind of upcoming edition is a lot about more is more mentality, right? How do we reimagine the ways of working, and how do we invite new strategies of making and producing and presenting? That's the kind of general gist about Fierce, and just other kind of international hats I have worn or wear. I am also an artist, and I tour kind of mid-scale work. And last year, I represented Canada at the 2025 Venice Biennale of Architecture. I did the Canada Pavilion. So I wear little hats.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Eileen. I also am a couple of years in post in an organization that's been running 30 years, which is great. Before my time at New Earth, I went to an international devising school, so it was like make your own work in other countries. So back, that period of time when everyone does work for free in people's parents' bedrooms and in tents in the backyard and stuff. I did that, but in Mexico and Lebanon and Canada, and so all of my kind of graduate work was already engaged deeply with international aesthetics. And then through my own company, Theatre Tamois, I proceeded to do a lot of post-conflict work, so professional theatre, but for refugee communities. So through that, I was working in Gaza, Lebanon, Rwanda, Israel, or occupied Palestine, Kashmir. I was working in these contexts, and again, working with professional artists in those contexts, and kind of really immersed in the richness of what's out there, and then sort of at the same time coming back to the UK and freelancing and going for a job at the Young Vic and being here's all this stuff I've done, and they're we don't know any of those theaters. Are they the RSC? No. So that was an experience, and kind of wanting to bring that internationalism into the UK theatre industry, and seeing how xenophobic the UK industry was, not necessarily because they didn't like the aesthetics, but just because they didn't understand the currency. And then the RSC was suddenly doing Totoro, and after years of applying for these jobs, I think they went, fuck, who's Japanese and does puppets? And I was so suddenly I was the senior associate director within this very, very big machine, and kind of experiencing internationalism. But I think as it is with these huge IPs, you had the Japanese producers who were sort of a ghost role, and then you had a creative team who were wonderful, lovely, incredible individuals, but the core creatives were white men. And then you had a fully EC cast, and then you had me as this weird pivot, as the lead Asian, trying very hard to support the creative team, which was my technical role, but actually also bring this internationalism and these international values and international aesthetics into the conversation, kind of through this back channel of my associate director position. So that was one, and then the job at New Earth came up, and I was why isn't New Earth co-producing this? And so I I joined New Earth with the aim of making sure that the next time there was a big show like that, New Earth, because all of the actors had come up through New Earth sort of development program. And it's funny because I didn't know which panel to sit on. And if I'd sat on the first panel, I think I would have told you about New Earth's 30-year history, bringing East Asian representation in the UK. But I think with this international, the reason I want to sit on this one is because one of the conversations, because for me it is about blending, but it's about opening up the UK landscape to international aesthetics. And I think there's an activism in that as well, because I think that will also necessarily open it up to the migrant artists who are already here who bring those aesthetics. So I think that it's the same conversation, whether you're working collaboratively abroad and bringing those aesthetics in, or you're valorizing the aesthetics already brought to you by your migrant population. It's the same thing when you look at the art that makes possible. Then at the same time, you've got this context of like, Lift Festival was putting out a call going, SOS, somebody fund us. We don't have money anymore because Creative Europe is no longer because of Brexit, right? So you've got this kind of this tier of international producers with that aesthetic, and it's like, oh my God, Clayton, you're the answer. And he's like, we're struggling too for the same reason. Very, very few UK organizations now that can do what they used to do. The ones that have a model of being funded internationally now can no longer rely on the Creative Europe money, meaning that they can only work with the producers that are Swedish, or do you know what I mean? So that is complicated as well, because how are you going to get your Taiwanese collaborators within that context? You won't. But at the same time, at New Earth, there's this other thing that happens, which is that I get pulled into these like showcases where somebody will come to me, an unnamed Japanese producing company or Korean producing company will come to me and say, I have £50,000 and I would like to do a showcase with your actors of this IP that has nothing to do with any of the aesthetics that your UK audiences will be able to appreciate. It's like so like, not to sound like colonial, but like really that, like we're not ready, we have to take our audiences on a journey, right? So then that's the opposite problem, right? Is that you've got these lopsided productions where you've got a fully British, East Asian, but British cast, and the lead creative team, the writer, the director, the producer, are all from a different country with a completely different audience. And really, what they want is they want to bring their £50,000. They either really want to break into the UK market. That's the saddest ones, because then it's like, this is a waste of £50,000. It's a really good gig for my actors that I'm providing you, and they're, it's a nice couple of weeks for them, and we all enjoyed the showcase, but it's not going to go any further because it's a 15-person cast, right? Or you get the other one, which is we really just want to tour this here once or open it here so that when we go back to Japan or wherever, we can say that it's toured the UK. And you go, that's a wasted opportunity in the context of Fierce Festival closing, and Factory International can only really bring in Ai Weiwei, and do you know what I mean? Like, because in that context, there's a really missed opportunity, which I'm excited about. And I know I talked too long, but that's why I wanted today to happen, because I feel like there's things we can do. This group.
Great, thank you, Alina. I think you kind of ventured into some of the things that hopefully we'll talk about in a minute in terms of some of those challenges that are there, and just how in different ways we might be trying to kind of navigate some of those as well. Thank you. Michelle from Factory International.
Yes. So Factory International is an arts organisation that actually does a lot of art in a lovely city called Manchester that has a lot of arts and culture happening, even though we're a post-industrial city. I'm Michelle Rocta, I'm the head of international partnerships, head of touring at Factory International. So I sit in the international department and I head up our organisation's international relations with other arts organisations, venues and festivals. So basically my work is to either work with other international partners to bring in international investment in the making of our work, which is co-commissioning, or we bring work that we do at Factory International in Manchester, or we platform people in the northwest of England, because Manchester is the northwest, artists, creative producers, the work that we do around the region. We work with international partners like Phil just now, you see on stage, on screen. He presented a work by Northwest-based artist Benji Reed at NYU Abu Dhabi. So these are some of the works that we do. more and more so, I've been working quite a lot on training and development. So just over luncheon, when we had our online meeting, I was talking to Eileen around how I've been working with a group of Japanese artists around international producing. We're also now working a lot on lobbying work. So I work a lot with British Council, with Arts Council, with FCI, Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, the Department of Business and Trade, and also recently with EU delegation to the UK. So most recently, I think it was Matthew was asking me about the International Producers platform. So I've been running 2 international creative producers platform recently, one with the British Council, where each of the British Council regions sponsor a maximum of 12 producers to come to Manchester twice, once during festival year, to come to our international weekend, which is where we send out the invitation to around 150-ish artistic directors and programmers from around the world to come not only see the work that we make at MIF, but also meet Northwest-based artists and creative producers through networking and pitching. And the great thing is, all these artistic directors and programmers pay for their own flights, pay for their own hotels, pay for their own show tickets. We might sometimes give them a drink, but they usually buy more. So that's a good business model, I realized. Ever since I moved from Hong Kong, because I moved from Hong Kong in 2019, I was West Kellen Cultural District's first contemporary performance programmer. I think even Wilfred does not know that. I was there before Ki Hong, before Bobo, before everyone. The first project they tried to get me to do was C2, and I was like, really? And then they go like, oh, can you do dance, theatre, music? Like, yeah, that's more like me. So that's what I do. And then most recently, I've been working with UNIC, really bad abbreviation, but it's actually the European Union National Institute of Cultures. So they have a London office where it's an umbrella organisation that looks after like your Goethe's, your Alliance Française, your Swedish Institute of Culture. So I've worked with the EU lot to bring in their money back into the UK to sponsor 12 of their creative producers and 1 Manchester-based producer to work on a delegation programme. And as part of that, we got the EU delegation to actually come to Manchester to try to unlock those conversations that we know is like, we're not part of EU right now, but we still share a lot of aesthetics and visions, and there's a lot of really good relationships that between the industry's colleagues we have already built. Can we continue this dialogue? So that's also one of the slow burns that we're doing. So that's just some of the work that we do at Factory International.
Brilliant, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone. And I think that I'd quite like to kind of follow on from perhaps the slow burns idea in a sense, because Eileen, you mentioned some of the challenges within the kind of context of working internationally, where we don't have Creative Europe. We know the extent to which cuts have happened around the world in terms of British Council. We know that there's shifting political landscapes that have to be navigated. We know that there's a lack of reciprocity in terms of how much international work is being brought in to England, into the UK, and how important that is in terms of the relationships. So, like your kind of recent example there, I'd like to kind of lead the conversation into just kind of how you feel, either in a kind of very practical way with something, that model that you're already working with, you might be able to navigate that, or just your kind of thoughts about where we are now and how we might move into something. And I don't want to kind of bring everybody down with a kind of like it's already negative. Obviously, there's a lot of fantastic stuff happening, but being realistic, we're at a point where it's really difficult, and within the context of the difficulties of touring work in England at the moment as well. So, would you like to kind of kick off with that?
I mean, it's always been difficult. Yeah. I can't remember. I've been in the industry almost 45, 50 years now, and I've never known it not being difficult. And I think part of it is knowing how to swim between the spaces of all the complexity of the problems we're facing. And that usually is the producer's role, is to kind of work out, because actually there are lots of opportunities out there, for artists to kind of, emerging artists to have opportunities to do R&D, to co-creative possibilities. I mean, next year I was able to secure a tour of international, I don't even know what we mean by international actually anymore, but of contemporary dance artists from China around to 5 cities in the UK through a co-funded, through the Chinese Dance Association, the Arts Council and the place. So I think we have to just reconstruct the framework in which we can access resources for things to happen. I mean, I still think that one of the main driving principles of any successful project is that you have a damn good idea, right? And you have a really interesting collaborative that captures people's imagination, and we're not pandering to what we think people want. And I think that's the big mistake. I mean, look, the market is very complex because you have shows that do pander to what people want. They're good for box office, they work great, and we need them, you know. There are shows that are much more experimental, that challenge how we see things. There are shows that, I think the international in terms of the casting, let's say, the beauty of those shows is the kind of, the beauty of having multiple perspectives in a single space. And I think that enriches the way that someone interprets or expresses an idea. Because if we spend our whole lives with people like ourselves, we don't learn anything. And I think that, you know, and that cross-pollination of thinking has actually been happening for over 150 years. I just wrote a speech yesterday, actually, about how even the mother of Chinese dance was born in Trinidad, influenced by Trinidadian carnival. Then came to London to study under Mary Bombay when she was 14. And then saw Uday Shankar, an Indian artist, on stage who worked with the Russian dancer Pavlova, who then thought, I'm going to go back to China and look at all the ethnic dance groups and record them with lava notation, right? And then started the Beijing Dance Academy in 1954. And the name of the Central Ballet of China was actually called the Experimental Dance Ballet Troupe of the Beijing Dance School. So this is a story that, you know, look at Lin Wai Min in Taiwan. You know, he studied, Graham went back, introduced Beijing, Peking opera into Tai Chi. So what I'm saying is that this cross-pollination of thinking is what makes what we call these international projects fascinating, right? And they're the ones that audiences are very curious. We know there are curious audiences and there's audiences who want to have a good time with their friends and family. They're two different types of audience. And again, as people produce shows and create shows, we have to navigate and understand where we're not wasting our time in the wrong space. And so I think coming back to what we said earlier is that as a producer, you've got to find the right space of possibility in which somebody can flourish and actually, you know, and reach out to, you know, because I don't think it's difficult, but if you become what you think. If you start thinking it's difficult, every choice you'll make will be a laboured, difficult choice.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. I just wanted to come to when you were talking about producers finding those spaces, and I know through the work we're doing with Caravan, what's come back to us quite a lot is that producers coming through are going, how do I learn? Where do I find that from? And you've been supporting producers through your work as well. So that kind of nurturing process needs to happen to be able to have that continuum as well.
Absolutely. So, you know, in the new idea for my company, Fun Ling, is that I don't want it to be led by a single person, like a single artistic authority is what usually happens. So the idea is I want to create what I call an ecosystem. So you have associate producers, associate artists, a dance company, a dance festival, an R&D element, and a curation element. And I think through thinking that through the last month, I was thinking there's a way which I can feed different parts of that. Some need, some give. And you know, and every single structure is in that dynamic of needing, giving, and growing. And how do you create a system that goes? So producers are central to that. But also the system, the structure which allows it to flourish is also central to that as well. So I'm just exploring a new model about how an arts organisation could work in a more ecosystem approach.
Brilliant, thank you. And we were talking earlier about funders, kind of noticing that a lot of the major funders are now not just interested in what the project might be like, but interested in the kind of systemic change that might come from the work. So I think there's something quite positive there in terms of how some of those funding bodies are thinking now. Can I ask you what are some of the kind of hoops that you find you might have to kind of jump through, or what are the kind of ways in which successful collaborations come out of the process of curating the festival?
I mean, I think the reality of kind of live art practice in this country feels, maybe I'm wrong, can you prove me wrong, feels completely broken, right? Where the kind of UK artists that I'm speaking to for the festival are the same ones that my predecessor was speaking to 10 years ago, right? Because there has been a real obsession in this country. I don't say in this country derogatory, but I'm just saying in this country. In this country where the obsession has been with scaling up, right? So there's been a kind of collective desire, we need to put our money behind these 5 artists, they're gonna get all the funds for the next 10 years, and we're gonna hopefully scale them up and see what happens, right? But what that's done is kind of left a real gap of how are artists who are fresh out of school or kind of early stages in their practice, moving from there to whatever level kind of fierce perceives himself as to be. Right? And I think this is a real challenge. And I think a lot of the kind of questions that we're asking within this kind of new more is more saying yes to things mentality is how do we actually return to the DIY context, right? Where not to return to the no one's getting paid model necessarily, but how do we do things for the sake of doing things, right? Because whether we want to debate the kind of language factory or garden, there has to be some give in the system. And how do we actually believe in the value of coming together more often than every 2 years to make work together, to be in community with each other. Because, the reality of Birmingham is this kind of strange place where 10 years ago, kind of the larger institutions were funding experimental practice, where now there's not really anyone, right? So actually, how do you start from zero again? And the kind of answer that we're trying to explore is just do it by doing, and at very small scales and modest scales, but actually the amount of, I would say, goodwill that's been generated from it. We're doing a new series, for example, called Fierce Jams, which is a dialogue context for 5 artists. And the amount of goodwill artists coming out of the woodwork to say we want to collaborate with you on this is super exciting, right? It's a question of like, if you build it, maybe they'll come, who knows? But that kind of possibility is exciting, I think.
Can I just respond to that very quickly? I think it's really great what you said, and be derogatory about our system because it is broken in that way, in that we've been into a celebrity culture, right? That the big names win the prize, get the money, get the resources, and there's a growing divide in that. And actually that is one of the problems that, that has been taking place. And that comes back to what I said earlier, that we're no longer about careers, we're about works. Right? And if the work works, then we keep it, and it's no longer about taking someone on a journey, through that very fragile stage. I mean, lots of artists that I know, have taken about 8-9 works to arrive at a place where they've found their voice through their work. And it's that nurturing of the career as opposed to buying of the show, which has been the problem in it right now.
Michelle, you wanted to say something?
To respond back to the idea of the slow burn artists and producers, I think when you think about working internationally, whether you're an organization, independent artist, or producer, it's always important to remember to ask yourself why. Why are you doing this? Is it part of your practice? Is it a dramaturgical reason? Is it financial? Is it like what we were talking about, like the unnamed Japanese producers? They're looking for something specific. So to them, they didn't have to take away any learnings because that's what they needed. So I guess like as independent artists and producers, if you can clarify at this moment, why do you want to go international, then you'll be able to unlock a lot of the resources. So say, for example, I know actually a Taiwanese artist has recently worked with CERN, Arts with CERN, because her practice is around science and technology and something to do with things that I don't understand because I don't understand astrophysics, even though I think it's really interesting. But that's her practice. And she approached that open call, got it. She wouldn't have got the open call with NCAR, which is the National Center of Artistic Research in Japan, because they're interested in health and well-being, and they're working with the University of Manchester. So that's a completely different ecosystem. So if you can articulate why you want to do certain things, then suddenly you'll be able to see, actually, it's not Arts Council, it's not Creative Scotland that I'm looking for partnerships with. I might be looking at, I don't know, a water company because I'm interested in water ecosystems. So that might be a way. Oh, Dan, Commonwealth. Dan, Commonwealth Theatre based in Bradford and Cardiff, one of the most inspiring theatre companies that I know. they are really interested in creating theatre that can make a positive social impact. So one of the works that they made was it for Bradford? Was it the one that was around
Esophobia.
No, it is about.
what is it called again?
Keep talking along.
Yes. So come on, Dan. So they made two works. The first council, they thought actually all companies, big and small, will have a human resources training and development fund. So why don't we go to the police force, get to the HR company and department and go like, do you have any training funds? If so, do you want to lower racial profiling numbers in Bradford?
Wow.
If you do, come and work with us on this theatre production. So they've actually engaged actual police officers to inform the work, and actually more so it's the artists and creators themselves, so these Asian men modifying engines, narrating why they're doing this modification of engines to the police. And actually, they worked on the project together, and ever since then, the number of racial profiling has dropped in Bradford. And I think that's, again, knowing why you want to do something, and then you'll suddenly see, oh, these are some of the resources that can open.
Thank you. There's something really interesting there, I think, about who you might partner with, or who or where the kind of meeting point might be, and that actually for an artist in England-based artists, that might be an international connection, and you might not have the track like you were saying, Clayton, of like at the moment, a lot of people thinking, oh, do I go for an NPO application? That's a 5-year process. If you've not had that funding for 5 years and then you're unsuccessful again for the next 5 years, that's a decade where you haven't got that security. But also for a lot of artists, what do I know what I'm going to be doing in 3 or 4 or 5 years time? Actually, the way I work is organic, and it might not be like that. So I think there's definitely something that we've found through Caravan, that there's been a lot of interest in kind of co-creative models that have been really new ways of working, and actually that might be the starting point for a conversation with another international partner that could become something and just bypass worrying about grantium applications.
There are two examples of like practice that kind of jump out as possibilities. One, we recently worked with a company called Zuko, who works a lot in translation spaces. We work a lot with deaf artists, and there's an interesting thing about Arts Council, how actually as a theatre sector we're very, very awake to like translation for like BSL translation, integrated BSL, like we're all over that, but like sort of struggle with like surtitling and subtitles. It's like I saw a thing at the court recently that had some that was great, but like mostly we're sort of like shying away from that as a sector. And you go, are you kidding? We sit on our phones reading captions like hours every single day. Our audiences are so ready. And I think that there's as soon as we did this project, what it meant was that we had actors who were not from the UK, who were migrant actors who were speaking in their native language. So obviously already the quality of the performances was like incredible, because they're able, that barrier is removed. You get something that's really, really exciting and authentic. And actually it's just a design conversation at that point. It's like, where do you put your gauze screens so that, how many projection surfaces do you have? But it feels much like, it feels really, really potent and really close, and I'm really excited about that work. The other thing is like, I have had a couple, there's one, again, I haven't checked in with people about whether I can talk about their IPs and stuff, so I'll be vague, but I'm sure you wouldn't mind. But there's one Korean company and producer in particular who approached me and said, I want to crack the UK market. And I was like, do you really mean this? You don't just want to say you've been here, you actually want to crack it? And he's like, yeah. And then he brought me an IP, and I looked at it, and I said, I can't translate that play. If we go back to the original, because the way it's been written has been written for a Korean audience, and the Korean audience has a lot of association. For example, it's sort of like Europhilic in the sense that like the style is like Gothic European, which won't do anything for our audiences here. Make it Korean, that'll be sexy. The kind of fundamental premise of the story is about the kind of link between sort of like visceral hedonism and creativity. And I'm like, we don't share that link, but what we do have is we have a whole conversation around accountability for artists, and how like the Michael Jacksons of our world, and that they're allowed to be as long. So there's this kind of like, what monsters can genius be? So there was a whole different angle that you needed to take to dramaturgically adapt something for a UK audience, and it meant starting from scratch. So we were looking at a collaboration that was like 1 year, and then we were actually, this is 3 years, because this is a rewrite, this is that. But he was willing to do it, and I think that's that thing that you're talking about identifying the space of possibility. Like the first thing you want to find is those partners who are like, no, we understand the broad journey, the deep journey, the slow burn, and not kind of the like, let's get it out tomorrow and try to sell something that fundamentally isn't translated for this context. So I guess translation and like deeper translation is the big theme that I see.
Great, thank you. And also, I guess what you were saying earlier with the example of the kind of networking opportunity as well, that kind of those spaces for people to come together, and making sure that if we're the kind of gatekeepers of those spaces, we're opening the doors to a whole range of different artists to be able to come and engage in that way. We run International Producers Breakfast as part of the Edinburgh Festival with EIF, and it's exactly that opportunity to bring the artists together with all the kind of international programmers and presenters who might be in Edinburgh. Karen, I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, well, it's a lot easier for dance internationally, isn't it? Is that should we delve into form? Is it kind of is it easier? Do you think? I mean, it's international language to a certain extent.
It's easier than speaking.
Yeah.
And well, it is speaking as well, but in a different way, right? But I mean, I think it is. I think it's easier and you look at dance companies around the world, ballet companies as well as contemporary companies, they're made up of people from many nationalities. So, and that's been happening for, as long as I've been around in the industry. So yeah, it is easier, and therefore co-productions are easier and co-creative possibilities are easier. But I do think there's, again, coming back to this, the need for slow burn, the need to find, because I think before I'm trying to work on a piece now, and I'm trying to be a director, and I'm learning to be a director actually after being a producer for 25 years. And they don't get on very well in my head together, to be honest. They're two very different animals, and it's very interesting to discover that. And I really have a lot of respect and sensitivity towards the way an artist's mind operates now. And I realised that one of the most important things for me before I even want to create a show is I have to find the language for that show first. And so I'm trying to explore language right now, and I'm just going to explore it until I'm ready to then bring it into a show. And I think that's that space, and I don't know what that is. All I know is there's certain people, it's about people that are almost like muses. They inspire you to kind of think, I will go with you and into a space and explore, in a playground and try to find something. But art surprises us so often. I mean, I think there's a danger when we get into the geopolitical nature of art, right? When we give it, kind of labels of countries. There's a great Indian dancer. I said, I don't use my hands for waving flags, I use them for dancing. Right? And then you get in the space of culture. Now, culture only expresses what things are, but art expresses what things could be. And I think what you're trying to do often is in this exploratory space is to have enough time to think, what could something be without knowing what it's going to be before? Only knowing that if you're going to enter a space with someone, and that's therefore it's the producers in the room's obligation and responsibility to conjure up the circumstances in which their artists can do that. You have an unbelievable power, and you've got to use it responsibly. And it requires an intense amount of concentration, focus on the smallest of details for a very sustained period of time before you can take your foot off the gas. So producers' responsibility, right from the moment they conceive an idea with their artist till it's delivered, they cannot relax for a second. They have to ensure that that artist is in this space where they are protected, their ideas, because every idea is born innocent. You can't contaminate it too quickly, right? And so it's got to be allowed to think. So I think the producers here, it's not just about resources, it's also about how do you adjust your mindset so you can create a resource, a space for that artist and that idea to be able to flourish. Now, we just had a quick, when Michelle was talking about the police, I remember years ago, a French road construction company wrote to Akram Khan.
I remember that case study.
And my general executive director binned the letter, says, what has a road construction company got anything to do with dance? But being the curious and kind of unstable human being that I am, I read that letter and I said, I want to go to Paris and to talk to you about this, because I'm curious, why would you want to work with us? So, right, and it comes back to the listening. So I just asked them to tell me the stories of their company. Company's called Colas. They told us how they build roads in Mozambique, in India, how they connect talent, how they create flourishing. And as I listened for almost an hour and a half to the CEO, I then said, you know what, you do exactly what we do as a dance company. You take people on roads, we take people through journeys, we make them honestly. And then after that, 6 years later, €1 million of sponsorship out of this company.
Yeah.
Right. So I think part of the responsibility is not just to get the transaction out there, it's to listen deeply enough to where you are connected to a person, to an organization, to a funding system, that you can find that value connection that brings you together to be able to do something remarkable.
Brilliant, thank you. And that's something I remember when we had our earlier kind of online meeting, you talked about kind of currency in different ways, Lee, that sort of sense of, which is about exactly what you were saying there, the real value. And I think that kind of, it would be kind of disingenuous to say there isn't a kind of world of commerciality out there where people are looking for what will sell or what's the big title, but there are a lot of people out there that are going, why is this work necessary and important now, and understanding why certain artists and work has to happen or has to be to find an audience. So thank you for that example. We're all going to be Googling those kind of companies.
You know what? Just quickly, when I first graduated as a dancer, so I was the only one who went to university at my dance company, right, for about 6 months. And then I wrote letters to get funding for the dance company. And I wrote about 200 letters to big companies, didn't get one reply. Then I read the letter and said, I wouldn't fund me if I read that letter. Right? So I repositioned the tone of the letter. I studied the companies more, I looked at their values, I looked at their annual summaries and sheets like that. And then after, I rewrote those letters again and I got funding from Reebok, Marks and Spencer's and IBM.
Wow.
Just by changing the tone of the way I approached the company and also understanding what mattered to them, not just what mattered to me.
Yeah.
That show was called Vertical Road.
Vertical Road, there you go. The
Thank you. Anyone else like to add anything to that, to what we were talking about there? Otherwise, we've probably got enough time to... Michelle? Yeah.
I have another, so picking up on what I've seen from international partners, that what they're looking for. Obviously, they're like partners who are looking for a specific big name to always listen. But what I've seen a lot of festivals are looking for is bringing the international with the local. Because as we know, international collaboration is really pricey. It takes a lot of time. And also there's a lot of geopolitical push to nurture local talents as well. So just with Factory International, some of the works that travel the most actually travel with the least number of artists, but it's the concept that tours. So I am very biased. I'm the board chair of Quarantine, which is a performing arts company based in the Northwest. Very Mancunian now. They have a piece, well, there are two pieces. One is called 12 Last Songs, and the other is called No Such Thing. With No Such Thing, no one travels. With 12 Last Songs, quite a lot of people travel. But then with another work that I'm working with Richard Gregory, who's the artistic director of Quarantine, called What is the City But the People? One person travel. What is in common with all of these is that the concept itself is what the producer of the arts company is selling. Everything else is recreated locally. So with What is the City But the People, the idea is from Jeremy Della. It opened at MI27 at 17, where Jeremy said, celebrate the people of the city on a giant runway, full stop. And we're like, great, we can do this, but how? So we got Richard to direct it, and he put together a dramaturgical structure to it, how it's actualized with like screens and working with local writers and videographers and photographers to create this beautiful show. We thought it would only happen in Manchester because it needed 200 Manchester people, but no, it's open like Sydney Opera House's 50th anniversary celebrations. It's been to Bergen Festival where the King and Queen of Norway and the Prime Minister was there. So a lot of shows like that where you can translate the concept into something that you can share internationally. I see that as something that that has been traveling a lot. And there's something around thinking about form and also thinking about, as artists, a lot of times you start with not knowing what you want to do. The reason behind it's called No Such Thing in 12 Last Songs is because they had no idea what they are at the beginning, so they just put something like, there's no such thing, we don't know. But No Such Thing ended up to be just a conversation between an artist and a local audience in a 3 curries and rice. Do you have that in London? No. It's like, so 3 curries and rice, oh my God. It's like a Manchester thing, hole in the wall where you just go into like the grummiest cafe and then you choose from a menu of 3 curries and you get a rice, and it used to be 6 quid, now it's around 8. But it's like where all the locals hang out for a quick lunch. And quarantine engaged with one of my favorite 3 curries and rice places called Cabana in Manchester in the Northern Quarter. And audiences sign up, they come in, they choose from a curry menu and a conversation menu. And they get to sit across the table with an artist or sometimes just another neighbor to have a conversation. And the conversation might be, mine was like around marathon, and I was like, I don't run marathons. But like the questions were, what do you think about beginning? What motivates you? How do you end something? So you have this conversation, and if you like that conversation, you can continue outside. If you don't, goodbye. But that kind of work, is it dance, is it theatre, is it music? No, we don't know. But it's a concept, and it's since been to like Turkey, Brazil. So think about why you want to do and who do you want to speak to, and then you'll be able to unlock a lot of things.
So we could call that globalization.
There's that made me think about the Stan's Calf of all the people in all the world as well, the rice show, which is kind of, a ton of rice with each grain of rice representing a person, and just piles of rice. There are different statistics, but such a strong idea that started in Birmingham, the Venice Biennale, the Kennedy Centre, the Kennedy Centre, all around the world, been extraordinary. And that, we probably haven't got time to kind of delve into the importance of environmental sustainability in relation to international work, but certainly concept touring and kind of deep touring where people are thinking about touring, but also thinking about how you might work with a particular community or different kind of audience for a longer period of time. Lots of kind of dynamics happening there. I think we've probably got about 15 minutes or so left, so it'd be great to open it out to you for any questions that you might have for any of our panel.
Hamster on.
So proactive. That marathon work.
It's lovely to meet you all. I actually don't know anyone from here, but like there's so much things that I'm taking from here with all the professional knowledge. I'm Anza. I'm a set and costume designer, so I'm completely different field, I guess. So far, I was listening. But it's so inspiring, and also Barb, you were talking about when you're starting up, you're like writing letters to people. That's what we are doing too. I'm having this very small starting up company called My Syrian Theatre Company with the director of friends. We're just making theatre. We love making theatre, so we're making this devising piece. But at the same time, we both are creative. Randy, you mentioned about like we wanted to introduce this show, but at the same time, we both have this artistic mindset, and we are so fully engaged with the piece that we're like, we have this much of passion, but we don't know how actually to communicate or how to expand this, sustain this, our show, or at the same time, how to expand this company further. We are at completely starting point, and then this amazing grand like knowledge that I'm listening, it's like, feels like so far away, but at the same time, so inspiring, gives me so much inspiration. But at the same time, I would love to just hear about your advice, how you started from, and then what's important, I guess, like to hold this mindset, to expand this further, would be really appreciated.
You can mount it.
You know what? I tell you what, because we've only got 50. Can you take my email? And we'll talk about it, because this needs a longer conversation. I'm not going to give you something that's like plucked off the top of a box, and that's not going to help you. So I think I'd much rather have a longer conversation, understand really more deeply about what you're doing and why you're doing it and where you want to position it. And so I'm really happy to talk to you after that.
I have one piece of advice. My one piece of advice is don't ask us, ask somebody who's like 2-3 years ahead of you, because even what I did is now obsolete. We're in a different landscape, and I think that's not a negative thing. There are people doing it. It just they'll have better knowledge. Yeah.
Oh, I'm always on the verge of quitting. So I'm
That's such a good one. So a very good friend of mine said to me the other day, he said, I gave up being an artist because I couldn't find a reliable connection between hard work and doing well. So,
That's it, isn't it? Well, no, but that's it. Is find the things that will sustain you, because there isn't always a reliable connection between.
There isn't a
hard work and
reliable
well.
connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add about it took me back to when I set up my first sort of touring theatre company. I remember kind of getting to the point where we were starting to get bookings and things were happening, and I was just bloody doing everything from my flat, I'm doing the marketing, and I kind of look back now and think, God, I really needed a producer. I had no one that said to me, Pete, you need a producer. And also that starts to kind of really impact the kind of focus that you're allowed to or need to have in terms of being an artist and working forward as well. When you're suddenly like, oh, now I've got to do a bit of marketing, or now I've got to get publicity, or now I've got to get stuff on Insta, So I think there's something really, I'm sure that kind of through your conversation as well, around how important it is to, the kind of role of the producer. So there's a lot of people here, I think, could probably help with that as well. Great, do we have any other questions?
So I'm an artist based up in Scotland and doing some research and work into how we can sort of amplify and support the EC communities and artists based up there, because it's very different. We have nothing. Some of you might know Andrea Lee. I met her, she's really cool. There's her, and then there's me, and then there's a lot of grassroots artists who are really exciting, but we don't really have any sort of infrastructure or community that has funding attached to it and all of those things. And I think I am doing a research project attached to the National Theatre Scotland to sort of explore that. And I think Scotland has a really different relationship sort of with international work. I think because of the festivals and because of the fringe and things like that, it's just a bit different. And within the artists in Scotland, it can be quite a negative thing. I think particularly for EC artists, in the sense that the only time it happens is when an organisation will do sort of a big collaboration with a large international EC venue, and then all the artists in Scotland are like, we don't like it because we're not involved and we can't even afford to see it, which is a big shame. And I really want to sort of spin that narrative on its head, because I think a lot of our artists are emergent, are exciting, but haven't had the experience, right? And there's a lot of experience to take from international work. So I guess, how would you spin it for them? I would love to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here like, it kills me, because we are doing so much in terms of like infrastructure for North-based artists, particularly in the Greater Manchester area and up in York and stuff. And we've talked about Scotland because Kelsey goes and does a regular Edinburgh intervention. You've probably met.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we can't. It's because Creative Scotland and Arts Council, they're different.
Yeah, and it's really
so we can't. We can, but it would just be like money. There'd be no. Yeah, so I think, but I do think there is something about looking at the because it's a coffee. Let's have a coffee. Let's have a Zoom. But it is that. But I do think that there's still stuff we can do. But it's about creating. You need a theatre company. You need the first DC theatre company of Scotland.
Yeah, I think we've got there. Yeah, we're like we need it. We'll work on how to do that, and we'll work on how to do it, because we don't really have a lot of people are artists and artists first and not producers first, and that's sometimes a challenge, right? Especially in those, I mean, we're not a region, we're a nation, but in those like regional bits is that, but yeah, I guess that would be great to have a coffee.
Yeah, that's coffee.
Great.
One thing to think about when you're trying to get funding, particularly if you're in a group that's underrepresented or underserved, don't play the deficit game.
Yeah.
Play the addition game.
Yeah.
Great.
But don't say that. I think when you play the deficit
It's
argument,
sad for everybody.
it's sad for everyone. And it's sad for yourself most, because you're actually playing in a diminished version of what you are.
Yeah.
And I think it's the addition, it's the added value.
Yeah.
It's not the plug in a hole. So
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I think there's a general thought within this too of whether we can rely on these kind of institutions to save us in a way, right? If we think about these large contexts, like Factory, like Edinburgh International, and where we're at in our careers, is this actually a good fit for where we are right now, right? And oftentimes it's not. As Factory as an example, and can stop me if whatever. But if you're not an artist who can sell 5,000 tickets a day, it doesn't make any financial sense to be there. Do you know? Because these are the kind of realities of the system. So how do we think about how, of course, that shouldn't be limiting what our imagination is in 5, 10 years or whatever, but actually how do we understand what the context is of the Scottish ecology right now, and what are the ones that can currently fit with what we're doing? What can we create on our own? How do we build that up together? I think these are the kind of strategies to think about.
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
I'm not familiar, but I always think, look at what was happening in the 80s, 90s with the queer art scene. There's
Yeah.
Exactly. So again, it's the same narrative that happened. It was, they didn't play the deficit, they had to for a while, and then they're like, no darling, we're not doing it. We're the queens here, look at us. And then it became really cool, and now look at...
Is that your gay voice?
It's not American, right?
It's better than my game.
I think there are lots of... We did a show called The Faggots and Their Friends Between Revolutions back in 23. And again, that was inspired by a book in the 70s, but there are allies and histories that we can look back at and go they did it well, we can learn something from that, and then build from that, and then maybe in 10, 20 years later, you'll be the case study that go look at what they've been doing. Yeah, exactly, right? You're the queen.
Thank you, that was really good.
Thank you. Do you have time for another question or two, Hans? Is that right?
We should all answer in our gay voice.
Mine stays exactly the same, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about questions of translation, because I mentioned that. I'm translating a Korean play at the moment that would like to come to the UK, but it's largely based on Korean history, like the war. And they're like, oh, we want to localize it and tailor it for the UK audience, but for me, it's then what's the point of bringing a Korean play if we're going to lose all that cultural references and sentiment? So I was wondering if you have any insights or your opinion about translating and localizing the show. How much do you have to accommodate in terms of people who are not familiar with Asian culture, Asian history? It's really difficult because I don't have the full agency to do a dramaturgical edit of a script or paraphrase it in a way that will work in the UK. I do have to pertain that cultural references and what the writer wanted to do, but also they want me to make it work in the UK, if that makes sense.
This is my experience with these companies. With all the love in my heart, I feel to some degree you've got an impossible task if you don't. And that's why I said I actually had this exact same thing. I said I can't do a translation of this play; it won't work. And if we try to recontextualize every single reference or joke, it will be a Frankenstein's monster of a play. You sort of have to strip it back from the very beginning, and I think it's about understanding scene by scene what are your parameters and what is the architecture. You sort of go, these are the references that they won't get, but that they might understand if it what it is vibe-wise. So there's a lot that you can kind of leave as is, and people like that feeling of ooh, this is specific and I'm learning something. But there will be things that just won't land without all of that context, and then you have to make a decision between how are you going to spoon feed some of that context in the actual architecture of the play, or are you going to recontextualize it to something that, I think you have to keep it set in Korea. I absolutely think you know. I'm only laughing because I remember at one point the Japanese producers were like, please give the Kusakabe's a Tokyo accent, and then the Ogakis, could they please have northern accents? No, that will be awful. I think that there's this like straight translation thing of like trying to contextualize into Britain that again won't work. But I do think that if you've got a little bit of like, if you're like, look, these emotion, I would start with the emotion. I would start with what is the emotional resonance of something? What is it supposed to make the audience feel? Why is it there? And then work backwards from there. And where actually the information is important because it provokes a feeling, then I would work to get that information into the script, translated somehow. It doesn't have to be, again, it's the exposition question, and it has to be done elegantly in a way that where it doesn't feel shoehorned and it feels intelligent. So it's a hard task. I think writing a new play from scratch would be an easier task. But I do think you're doing the work. Like, this is the work I'm excited by, because actually this conversation about how you do translation to bring the richness that exists in that existing text, but in a way that the UK audiences understand and receive and can actually experience what a Korean audience or something resembling what a Korean audience would feel. That's the work I'm interested in, right? Like, that's actually really exciting. It's just a bit, it seems like you're in a tricky situation because you're a bit late down the line. Yeah. Good luck.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Hi, I thought that was very, oh, so sorry. Hi, I thought your question was actually really interesting.
Yeah.
I wanted to give you a little bit of advice as well, just around communications. So a couple of months ago, I was approached to market a Korean musical.
It might be the same one. Actually. No, I know.
That was something else. With that, it was international producers, so they were Korean. They wanted to have a English, not Southeast or East Asian cast. They wanted to be like English speakers, English translation, because they didn't understand the cultural relevance of actually one, not only platforming community, but also language, identity, and something that's a little bit new in terms of writing. They just saw it as like a touring type of thing. In that discussion, I had to highlight, one, the sort of cultural prevalence regarding representation, especially for Southeast and East Asian performers, also audiences. One thing to sort of outline with that as well in regards to your production, I think there's a beautiful element in regards to language, especially Korean culture, but also a way to sort of translate to audiences the important prevalence of having that work, not as a way to sort of separate, but again to welcome. And not only that, you're welcoming new audiences as well, and platforming again your own community. What I would highly suggest is putting together a communications package, or pack, which one articulates the intentions of the production, also articulates the journey, and also specific wordings that you want to be used to celebrate as and far from diminish the creative work of the production. I did this quite recently when I was doing a show for Factory International, so Return to the Forest. So we had to do a lot of work around articulating what the show is to specific audiences. Another thing to mention as well is that when you're touring shows, each place that you're going to go to will have a different, distinct audience range. So even if you're developing one audience in another part of the UK, or international or regional, they're not going to be the same audience that you're going to have in another venue. So that's why I was definitely would say create that communications pack. That is one of the most important assets that you'll have, because it will stay true to the intentions and integrity of your production. So yeah, I'm very excited to hear how your show will go.
Communication pack for the audience, you're saying?
No, for you and your company. That will then also help with audiences in terms of like PR or press liaisons. With that as well, when we put together that communications pack, we then also sent across to like PR liaisons, and then they had a better way to articulate what the narrative and story is of the show, and using language that is respectful of the production, as opposed to using buzzwords that Western audiences would understand, but those may not be applicable to the culture and relevance and history of the show that you're representing.
Can I just add to that? That's pretty much similar to how Taiwan City Showcase is, because it's about artist work, but it's also about very culture related, because that's where they came from. So in order to bring in that general understanding of what the UK artists
work approach is about prepare the artist from beginning. So you prepare the artist by even having someone interviewing them, and in the language that can really express what the artist wants to say, and that can be understood to begin with, for the audience to walk into your show and merge that imagination between the marketing information you want them to read you, and then this beautiful journey together with your show. And I think that's very important, because I think a lot of Asian artistic work, like someone mentioned, they're very good at expressing themselves, but not very good at paperwork. And for us as Taiwan Citizen, we do have our PR interviewing our artists even from very beginning of register into French. So the artists' words and their culture and what they wanted to do to come out to that piece of 30 words work. And I think that again is a strategy thinking how you engage into the audience which you are unfamiliar with, and weaving so many shows in where that international platform, how your work and the artist's work can come out and how you can support them through the journey.
Can I just add very quickly, I know we're about to finish, you have to be, there's a real danger when you want to go internationally that you want to be accepted. And we all know that when we want to be accepted, we have to make compromises, we have to adapt ourselves, and sometimes there's a danger we kill off part of who we really are. And we mustn't do that, and I think that's what you're referring to, how important it is to retain your authenticity and the identity you're going to have. Now that may split audiences, and that's okay as well. I mean, I've been in shows in India with Akram where in the first early days where we had a post-show discussion, there was war between the purists and the modernists. You know, we went on for about an hour. That's okay as well. But it's the fact is, if you don't retain the very essence of what the work represents, then why are you doing it?
Quickly, nice, and then we go quickly to Luca.
Hi everyone. I'm not sure if I'm gonna.
Did you have? Were you responding? Did you want to respond?
No, I wanted to ask a question if I'm
Oh, I think we've got time just for one. We've got Lulu, and then maybe we can just pick up nice afterwards.
I think I'm just gonna get quick, responding to your conversation, because I feel highly resonating with the idea of slow burn and also concept touring. I'm an artist myself, and I also run a platform for live art for the local majority. I feel like, to me, when working on a piece, when we're planting the state of it. It's not the ending bit. That's why I was very interested when I'm working with partner, a new community. I want to learn about what history they have, what kind of a culture they are, and how I can kind of translate again with my own language. So this is something I think also is quite important when artists working with organizations or festivals or collaborators, how we can weave the next generation of life of my work with all of those inspirations and let it work to grow instead of just that's a production and that's a product that it can commission me, pay how much and just for presenting it the same way in a new place. What I feel very exciting to me and helping me to grow as a human being, as an artist, is always learning from making work. And that is also something I found quite important, while organizations can really taking care of artists and giving long-term support and care. You give the soil for the seeds to grow. That's how we say it. To let them to feel safe to create the work. And sometimes everything, it's kind of like business, but deep down it's also about community. It's not just community about artists and audience. It's more a community about artists and collaborators. And this, regardless of the name, the IP, I'm more valuing about people who I'm working with and the conversation that we'll be building through together, this co-authorship, this co-ownership of one piece. And that's just what I would say.
Brilliant, thank you. I know one quick question in the back, and then we'll have to cut right up here.
Hi, I'm Nassie. I'm a producer for Marlborough Productions, and one of my projects that I'm supporting is a sector development program called Producer Gathering, which is a space for producers to connect and to create resources and commission, etc., etc. And I guess my main question is, as producers, we're often holding a lot of relationships, logistics, and care across multiple countries and culture, while also navigating geopolitical context. And I just wanted to hear from you guys, like, how do you balance the ambition with care, but also like how you sustain yourself as directors and leaders? I don't know if you can answer all in the next.
That might be another few coffee meetings. We're doing well for the hospitality. Can we just any kind of quick thoughts in response?
Like
to
a one-word response to that.
Say yes to food. It's so important in international culture exchange.
I like a not. Hire your friends.
I know it's real. Just be honest. Be sincere.
I've nothing to add.
There's the big question. I mean, just carving out more time, as much time as you can, is my thing really, and just kind of like if at any point, if a company or an organisation is conscious from whether that's like, I mean, hopefully if it's at leadership level, but if it's not, even from within the organisation, if people are really bloody struggling and pushing so hard, then like something has to shift. That model has to shift, and a lot of the time I just see the burnout. I think actually that's something that you just need to stop and find the money or find a way of working to be able to breathe properly. So I think sometimes it can be an organisational thing as well to kind of look at.
Thank you.
Huge thank you to Farouk.